Hi, I'm Nikki from Teaching Autism, and welcome to the Autism and Special Education Community Podcast. Are you an autism or special education professional? Are you a teacher or therapist looking for support and new ideas? You may even be a parent, family member, or carer. This podcast is perfect to help you find out more information, support, and get some of your questions answered. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of my Teaching Autism and Special Education Community podcast. Today I am so excited to have a guest come on my show called Nicole. Nicole has a son diagnosed with severe autism, and she has a young daughter as well. Nicole homeschools her son, and it's been the perfect environment for him. But today she's sharing more than just a homeschool adventure. She's also sharing with us how she helped prepare her son for the new arrival of their daughter. She has some fantastic ideas and advice, and I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. So I wanted to find out how Nicole decided to start homeschooling, the effect it's had on them as a family, and all the positives and negatives that come with it. Homeschooling is definitely more popular now than it was many years ago, and that's not necessarily a reflection of our teachers. I know how hard teachers work everywhere. Teachers are superheroes, seriously, having to differentiate work all the time, work on individual interests and targets, aligning everything to the curriculum, and on top of this, they're juggling behaviour management, classroom management, trainings, meetings. They're having to spend evenings and weekends working, they spend their own money on resources, and so much more. Now, the school environment can be perfect for so many of our autistic children. They love the school day, the setup, the routine, the class is set up perfect for them. Their teacher and support staff are able to give them the time and attention that they need, depending on their individual needs. However, the school environment can also be stressful for many of our children. A lot of our children struggle to sleep through the night, which means waking up early to get to school for 9 a.m. can have a huge effect on them. Many of our children can't cope with too rigid a routine or structure of a school day, and sometimes too many people in a class or area can be stressful for them. And there are so many other reasons that the school environment may not work for our children. And this is not a reflection on the teacher. If you are a teacher and you've had a child leave your class to be homeschooled, it's probably nothing at all, anything that you have done. I think all parents find it hard to watch their child go to school for the first time. The anxiety. Will they be okay? I hope they make friends. I hope they don't miss me. I wonder what they'll do today. And when they pick their child up at the end of the day, they can ask them these questions and usually get a valid response. But for many of our children, that's different. Many of our children are non-verbal, and those who are verbal may not necessarily understand what we're asking of them for what they've done today, or they may not even be able to recall those events. And that is so scary for a parent, which is why I always say that when we start a new school year, first, we always work on building relationships and trust with the child, their families, and their carers too. You and your staff may be the only ones who can tell them what their child has done today, and that is really scary. And if you're in a general education class for 25 to 30 other children, this is hard. You may not even have support staff in your room to allow this communication. So you may use a communication book instead. And we love to use our communication books because even though we can speak to some of our parents at pick up and drop off, or send emails, or I'll even phone home if I think they need to know something immediately, the communication book is a godsend, especially if we don't get the chance to talk to them. While we're talking about general education, I think it's important that we understand too that not all teachers, classrooms and schools may be equipped to deal with our children. I don't know whether your school system is the same as ours, but there's always so many budget cuts, and with that comes less services, less staff, and of course less training and equipment. We are so lucky to have so many staff in our special schools who specialise in autism and special needs, as well as different therapies that we can provide for our students. But that's not the case in all schools. So without further ado, I'm going to invite on Nicole and start our homeschooling podcast. Hi Nicole, welcome to my Autism and Special Education Community podcast. So first up, I just want you to tell us a little bit about you and your family and your little homeschool journey so far.
Okay, well, thank you, Nikki, for allowing me to be on the podcast with you. It's exciting. So I have an 11-year-old son named Justice, who is my firstborn, and he is my world. He has severe autism, and so where we're at now, he's 11, he doesn't talk, and he really doesn't use much form of communication at all. It's a constant journey, just trying to get him to use communication of any kind. Justice is on the severe end of autism, and his primary diagnosis diagnosis is intellectual disability with severe autism. So we have our hands full with this little guy, but he's definitely a joy to us, and we love having him in our lives. And then we have a lot of fun. He's got a great personality. He's very outgoing. But our family we have a 2-year-old little girl, and so when she came into the picture a couple of years ago, it really made things a little bit more difficult for my son. He was used to being kind of the center of mommy's world, and so he really had to adapt and adjust to his little sister. So that's where we're at. We have a loving, strong environment for him, but it's definitely with challenges.
It sounds brilliant. Honestly, the videos that you've shown me before of you and him working together, the love and care there, you can just see that homeschooling is perfect for him. He really thrives in that environment, and with you as well. Interesting about your daughter, because I know that a lot of families, they really struggle with the dynamics when they change, when they have a new baby. So were there any ways that you helped prepare Justice for your new baby arriving?
Yes. Well, first of all, I was never planning to have another child because it has been that difficult. So this was a unplanned surprise and very big blessing to us. But what I did is I set up her nursery early, and I literally, I set it up. I got every picture on the wall, and I put together her stroller and the crib and everything, the swing and everything. And I don't know if this sounds silly, but I bought baby dolls I bought 2 of them that looked as real as I could find. And I actually walked around swaddling a baby. I nursed my children, so holding the baby to my chest and putting the baby in the stroller, walking the baby in the stroller through the house and down the road, and taking Justice for walks with us, putting the baby in the crib. And I did this, and I have no idea if this was weird or not, but this is kind of what we did. We thought it would at least be something visual for him to have me putting a car seat in the car, even though it's adults, and I just kept telling him, Justice, the real baby's inside mama's belly. And I'd put his hand on my belly, and this is your sister, and she's going to come, and we're going to put her in strollers, and we're going to take her for walks, and she's going to be with us. It's always going to be the 3 of us once she comes. And I would try to explain it. I talk to Justice as though he's understanding everything. I'll never know for sure as long as he's not communicating what all he's really understanding, but he shows me in ways that he is understanding a lot. And so I use the visual as well as just talking to him and constantly reminding him that the real baby's coming, that your sissy's coming, and she's going to be here, and it's no longer going to be just the 2 of us, it's going to be the 3 of us. And so I just kept trying to prepare him, because even though there's dad in the house and there's others, but me and Justice were together 24 hours a day. It was literally one-on-one, just him and I, 24 hours. Now, other people could be added in. He never left my side. Even if he went to outside therapies, he didn't leave my side. So I just wanted to really prepare him for this new little life. And he did not handle it well when she came. Absolutely did not. But we worked through that as well. So
I love the idea that you used a pretend baby to do all those things, to show him what you would be doing with the baby when she comes, and getting him used to all the different routines. I really like that. And I think that's something maybe a lot of other parents wouldn't think of. But I think now you've shared your experience, that's something maybe they'd feel more comfortable with, because like you said, maybe sometimes it would look a little bit strange to other people, but what you were doing for Justice was worth those people thinking maybe that's a little bit strange, because it helped him in the long run as well.
Yeah, you have to give them something tangible. I know that there's a whole level of different types of autism, but Justice is very severe. And so that's the best thing I could think of, to give him something physical that he can see and touch and see before she came. And I really tried to put that all together for him. And I'm sure it did help. It was still difficult when she came into the picture, but I have to believe that if I hadn't done all that and we didn't set up the nursery and he didn't get the idea for this, that it probably would have been even harder. It was the best thing I could come up with.
Honestly, I think it's brilliant. I really do. And it
Thanks.
just shows him, the way that he can help you care for the baby as well. And setting up the nursery, I love that, because already you're showing the changes before the baby comes, rather than the baby arriving and then all these changes happen because of the baby. Whereas those little changes working up to her arrival, I think that just makes it a little bit easier for them to cope with as well. Do you think?
I do, and Justice, he was 9, I guess, when she came. So, and he's a big boy, but when I put the nursery together, he even wanted to climb into the crib. He wanted to sit on top of the swing, and I just didn't stop him. I mean, I didn't let him break things and abuse things, but I didn't want him to feel like that this was something completely separate from him. And I would tell him that this is going to be Sissy's bed. You can come in for a moment. You can sit there for a moment, and I'd let him cover up and snuggle up. He's a little snuggle bug, and he'd laugh, and I said, "No, come on, let's get out. This is Sissy's bed." And so I would just I gave him that freedom. I mean, so he tested kind of the room out, and he kind of got to touch it, and he even tried to sit on the swing. I mean, I obviously was hoping it didn't break. I wasn't letting him do it all the time, but I let him do it a couple times and just get the idea. And he laughed. He thought it was silly, and then I'd say, "But this is for baby," and then I take the baby and I put the baby in the swing, or put the baby in the crib. And so I think it did help. And I think, and then finally he no longer wanted to do that. He wasn't interested in climbing in the crib. It's like he had to get it out of his system. He had to see that it wasn't something that he was completely not allowed to be a part of. I wanted to bring him in that world as much as I could. And so I have no idea how much it helped, but I do believe it did.
I really think it did. The amount that you involved him, I really think that's probably had a positive effect. And I know you said that now they have a really good relationship and Justice really adores his sister.
Yeah, I mean, he does. I can see he gets a kick out of her. She's already a little mama. She's got her mom's heart. And so she's always following him around, trying to take care of him. And he'll kind of look at her and smile and look at me like, "Oh, no, I've got 2 of them." And so, he doesn't overly engage with her, but I can just see, he's very expressive with his face. You can read his thoughts sometimes so clearly. And it's funny, he'll look at her and she'll sit, Justice uses a Chewy to chew on. And even that, she's always like, "Brother, put in mouth," and she'll shove the chew in his mouth and he'll look at me like, "Really?" And it's cute. He just laughs at her, so, and sometimes he goes and pets her head. It's really kind of cute. So, I mean, he's not overly on top of her, but I can tell he's very protective of her. If she cries, and I can see that he's very alarmed, and he'll look for me to get her. And so, there's some definite sweetness there going on.
That's so lovely to hear, because honestly, I think a lot of times people worry that when they bring a new family member home, that their child with autism isn't always going to have that connection. And a lot of people think that the children struggle to socialize. But what I always try to tell people is all our children are different, and there's a lot of autism myths as well. And like you said, with Justice, that bond that he has going, although it's not always very communicative, the way that they interact with each other, that is very loving and caring. And that's what a lot of people don't realize with our children, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the autistic child he's going to follow you and what I've never made it an uncomfortable thing for him or for her. And so when she's upset that he doesn't want to play with her, I'll explain to her that brother loves you, but brother does things a little bit differently sometimes, and that's okay. And I don't want him to feel bad. I don't want her to feel bad. So I really work on them not feeling pressure or having hurt feelings over things. And I feel like that it's working. It's not perfect by any means. Justice definitely, when she first arrived, he showed a lot of behavioral issues, and he increased in behavioral issues. And I just had to keep, for the first 6 months, Nikki, I nursed my baby. So, that first 6 months, they're on you all the time. And I would just constantly be talking to Justice as I talked to her. If I said something to her, I would look to him. Justice, when you were a baby, Mommy held you close and she nursed you too. Justice, you were my boy, my little boy, but you're a big boy now. And I just kind of kept including him and really working that so he didn't feel like the baby was suddenly the star of the show and he was nothing. So I worked it. I really tried to include him, and I think that helped as well. But they're going to follow your lead. If you're really stressed that the baby's there and he's acting out, and if you show that tension there, he's going to follow that. They're going to follow that as well. So we just had to really work hard. That first 8 months was a huge, long adjusting time. And then it started to level out some. And so we've made it through and we're doing well.
Oh, it's so lovely to hear the dynamics of it all and how well he does. So moving on to your homeschooling. So why did you decide to start homeschooling Justice? Was there anything that prompted that decision and pushed you sort of into that journey with him?
Well, one, I think I was born, to be a teacher. I just had such a heart to teach. And when he was in my belly, I was already collecting all kinds of teaching type, stuff. I mean, literally, I had such a collection before he was even born. I mean, I just really had a heart for that. And so I had always thought that I would probably attempt homeschooling, or I would at least be one of those moms who really worked with their kids outside of school, and so I really just had a heart for it. But, as he turned 3 and as he turned 4, really as he turned 2, and I knew right away, I mean, there's something not right, with Justice. And as he turned 3 and 4 and 5, and he's still not talking, and he's still not showing, he's not pointing even. I mean, he's not communicating, and I'm working with him so hard. And yes, we had already been given the diagnosis of autism, but Justice was and is, he, a lot of autistic kids, I mean, they're different. I mean, we're all different, they're individual just like any other child. But Justice was very loving, very affectionate, and very sweet. Everyone would say for an autistic child, he really desires touch. He really desires affection, and that was very unusual. And I really wanted to preserve that spirit, that precious heart in him. And it's not that I didn't think it could be preserved in school, but I had a hard time letting go. But I did try. I went ahead and I felt like, okay, well, we're going to need outside help. At this time, no doctor I was working with has suggested outside therapies or interventions of any kind. So anything that I was learning through looking up YouTube videos and teaching myself so that I could teach him. And I made the decision that I really did want outside intervention. I wasn't getting anything from anywhere. So I went ahead to enroll him in school. And within 3 months, it was very bad. It went very bad, very fast. I mean, he went from my sweet, loving, very obedient little boy. I worked very hard with him from the time he was 2 up, to angry, violent, scratching, hitting. My school experiences isn't going to be someone else. I have nothing against the school environment. The teachers didn't let me in the class. I kept telling them, look, I'm not blaming you guys, but I need to know what's going on. I need to come in. I need to see. I'm his eyes. I'm his voice. He can't tell me, but something's going on. When I'm picking him up, it took me 3 hours to calm him down, and then it was time for bath and bed, and I didn't have no quality time with him. So because they weren't willing to let me come in and to help with the situation, I took him out within 3.5, 4 months. I mean, that I was done. So I had already had a classroom set up in my home with a ton of stuff, and I just began to try to teach him myself, really focusing hard on it more than I had ever had before. We've tried a couple times throughout his 11 years to put him back in school. There was one time he made it a whole year. It was fantastic. It was a great year, and he did well in that environment. It was a perfect teacher, perfect class. It was a perfect environment. It was one-on-one, and Justice requires one-on-one. So we have tried public schools a couple times, and like I said, we had that one good experience. But for the most part, every time I put him in, I lost my son. And I don't know if it's because he's so severe and he has no communication. And when I'm in tune with him, I can understand him. I really know what the sounds mean. I know what the actions mean. Okay, he's doing this because, all right, so we need to address this. And so because I can attend to him better, he just did better. And I work with him well, and you've seen the videos. And so it just got to the point where I really felt like this is just what I'm here for. This is my mission in life, is to just help this child be everything that he can be. And I've put my whole heart into it. And so for us, it's not that I'll never even attempt school again. But even if he's in public school, I'm going to always be doing things at home and working hard with him at home. And so right now we're homeschooling, and it's going fairly well. And it's a better choice for us in our situation right now. And again, we might address putting him back in school at another time. But for now, it's working, and it's working well.
Definitely. The videos and that, you can just see how much he really loves being taught by you and the interaction. You can just see the joy on his face. And I think, like you said, it's so important to have that connection and the trust with them before you start teaching them. And I think a lot of schools they either don't have the time for it, they don't have the staff for it. And that's that missing piece. That's the piece that really needs, sorting first before you can move on to teaching. And for you to have more time at home, you really understand him, you click with him. It just sounds the perfect environment for him.
Well, with Justice being as severe as he is extremely rebellious to an overly structured day. I have tried. I'm a very militant and detailed-oriented and organized person, and it does not matter my efforts. We have to go with the flow with him. So in school, they require that very overly structured, and that might be great for a lot of autistic kids, who maybe have a little more function to what they're able to do. But for Justice, it has been very tormenting to him. And so for us, it is working for now. And I do try, I have visual schedules and I have picture schedules showing what's coming next. And I have a lot of stuff here, but there is a freedom and it's a relaxed environment. And so he excels in a more relaxed, open space. And another thing with him is he can't handle a closed door. He doesn't like being put in a room with the door closed. So for us, this is working well. We go with the flow, so to speak. I have an idea for my day of what I want to do, and I get to most of it, but I do it in a way that flows with where Justice is, what his mood is. Did he sleep last night? Because we can go weeks without sleep. It can be really rough. So we have to just kind of flow with where he's at. But every day we work towards something. And so that's the freedom and the beauty of being able to homeschool, especially a special needs child who it's not going to be every day, a typical day. He could wake up having a meltdown from morning to night, or he could wake up the happiest, ready to go little boy. And so we really have to work, individually with him.
Yeah, and I think the flexibility of a homeschool setting as well, I think that's really perfect for a lot of our children. Like, I work in a special needs school with an autistic building, really, where all our autistic children are. And we can be really flexible. We have like 5 children in a class. And if a child comes in late, we can adapt the day for them, but not as much as we could adapt it if we were homeschooling them one-on-one. And I think if you have a child who is struggling to sleep, maybe they're not getting any sleep all night, to be able to start homeschooling maybe at 2:00 in the afternoon rather than 7:00 in the morning, where they're just trying to wake up and get used to the day. I think that would be beneficial for a lot of our children.
Well, and also like over here in our schools, you can't miss a day. You're allowed to miss 7 days a year, otherwise you get in big trouble. And so if Justice is having a week where he's going to bed at 4, 5, 6 in the morning, and I have to wake him up at 7 a.m. to get ready for school, it was ridiculous. And so I was sending him to school with, he's angry, he's already volatile, he's not, in any place to be in a public school. So then I would get the call an hour and a half, 2 hours later that Justice is throwing things and he's acting out and his behaviors are terrible. And I'm like, well, of course, you guys are forcing me to send him in when I've told you that he's not slept. And so it just was overwhelming to all of us. And not only was he developing anxiety from it, but I was too, because I didn't know what to do, because I felt like, if I don't send him to school, they sent me truancy letters. And what that means is that they were going to have a cop come out and confront me because he was missing so much, because he wasn't sleeping and he was, getting sick from not sleeping. And so for us, it was an overwhelming, this last time that we tried school, it was very overwhelming. And so, yes, this is definitely working better for us. And if he hasn't slept, then I let him sleep in a little. I still wake him up at a fairly decent hour by 9:30, 10 in the morning, but I'm not going to force him to jump right into an activity. I give him space to wake up and get going. And if I need to take him outside and let him run for a few and get some of that energy out and just wake up, then we can go downstairs where the classroom is and really begin to work into some things. So it has definitely worked better, and he's so much happier. I've seen all the anxiety that he was developing starting to disappear already. And so
Yeah, that's what we aim for, really. We want our children to be happy. And for Justice, obviously, that happiness through education is at home, homeschooling with you. And I think that's okay. Like, some people panic about not saying no to school. Some people panic that they don't want to try homeschool. But I think, like you said, every child is different. And where some may thrive in a classroom environment, children like Justice, he is thriving homeschooling with you. That's where he's feeling best in his environment. And the positive effects it's had on his mood, his anxiety, all that is obviously worth the homeschooling with you.
It is. And I'm lucky that I can homeschool him. It's come with a cost, I used to work and I used to be a professional and I used to make decent money. So it's definitely a sacrifice, but he's worth it. And I'm lucky and blessed that I can do it. And so while I can, as long as I can, I think that I'm really going to work towards the goal that we have to just help him as much as we can. So it's come with a lot of positives. There have definitely been some difficulties and making the decision, but I don't regret 1 minute of it. My biggest goal for him is if I can get him to a place of independence where he can have a life that's independent of me to some level, for us and how severe autistic he is. I mean, that's our biggest goal. And so that's what we're working toward.
That's really lovely to have, such an independent goal. You want life to just be as best as it can for him and for him to thrive in that. I know you've said that obviously homeschooling had an effect where you had to leave your job. Were there any other effects that it sort of had on you, in the home? I know you had a classroom set up, but were there any other things that you had to change?
But justice requires 100% of you, your time, and your energy. He is 100% dependent. He doesn't independently do much of anything. So it is definitely a huge pull. And I have a 2-year-old now, and it's definitely a huge pull. Okay, I don't know how else to say it except that it's difficult. We really, really need help, more hands in our situation, because he's as severe as he is. Having the baby changed everything, because she also is a toddler and she's requiring 100%. You wouldn't normally not be with your 2-year-old, would you? You mean you would be one-on-one with her all day long, but they both require that of me. So it's very difficult. And Justice, I can't bring her into the schoolroom to teach him, because then he won't work. If she's in there, he's very jealous over that time with me. So it is, there is a lot of working these type of things out. Obviously, financially, it was a huge, I tried working part-time till he was 2, but really, I knew by the time he was 9 months old that something was dramatically different about my child, and that it was difficult. Like, nobody could deal with him by the time he was 1 year old. It was a very difficult situation. So I gave up any hope of working by the time he was 2, and it has just been 100% pouring into him. And so it comes with some dynamics that, time with the rest of the family, really trying to organize a way that I could spend time with husband and daughter, and that we can not just be running around Justice's clock, but trying to get him to also work around us and what we're doing. And so it has been challenging, without a doubt. And the more severe the autism, the more it demands 100% of you, the more it demands every second of your time. And so it's had a lot of challenges. Sometimes I have thought, when I've been very weary, like, if he was in school, I could just be here right now with my daughter. I could just be relaxing. I could just be, because there is no relaxing. There is no downtime. So there's been the temptations at times, to just do it, put him back in, and because I'm tired, or I need more time with my daughter. And so there's definitely ups and downs, to it. And these are some of the downs. And, at the end of the day, I really don't regret it. And I've learned to really integrate time with my daughter and incorporate that in a way that isn't offending Justice. You really just have to learn to be creative. And a lot of times, time with husband is what suffers. And when the kids are finally settled late at night, and 12:30 in the morning, 1 o'clock is usually when that happens more. And then we can have more time together to talk and catch up on the day. So it definitely comes, with the ups and the downs. And it's been hard, but it's been good. It's been good and hard. So you kind of go with it.
It sounds like, although you've had, quite a few negatives with it, you've had a lot of positives as well. And I don't think people realize how mentally draining and physically draining it can be to have some of our children home 24/7, especially when you have a young toddler at home as well.
Yeah, it sure is. And for us in our situation, we don't have grandparents close. We don't have aunts and uncles. There's never, okay, I need an hour or two. Can you just give that to us? Could you come to our, I wouldn't probably bring Justice to someone's house, but hey, come to his environment, come to here. Could you give us an hour or two to go out and do something? So it is definitely around the clock, 24/7. But there are so many positives that have come with making this choice, and really even him being more settled and more relaxed and more calm, less behaviors. That is a huge plus, because when he was in school last, the behaviors just picked up so dramatically. Things I would never see him do at home, suddenly he's doing. The reports from the school were horrible. I was like, that's not my son, that's not my kid. And he was bringing those things home. And so just not having all those extra bad behaviors is a huge plus, right? And so there's good and there's the negatives, but the good just seems to outweigh it so much for all of us. At the end of the day, we're functioning much better as a family Saturday with him home. And so you just got to figure out what works for you. And if somebody is thinking about homeschooling, for sure, it's a sacrifice. And for sure, it's going to come with some kind of a cost. But there's a lot of benefits and there's a lot of rewards in that. And I think for most of us, just seeing our children begin to thrive is a huge part of that reward and that knowing that we're doing something right. But like I said, it does affect the entire family. When Justice is doing better, we're all doing better. And so it's been a good choice for us.
Definitely. It really sounds like it. And I think it's really hard if they're having challenging behaviours in school that you haven't witnessed yourself before at home. It's really upsetting for you as well, especially when you get those reports at the end of the day that Justice has done this, Justice has done that. And sometimes all those negatives coming at you is so draining. And that's when I think parent-teacher relationships start to struggle as well, because it's so much negativity being passed rather than Justice come in and he done this today and he was really fab. But instead, it's maybe like Justice was throwing things today. And I think the negatives can take over the positives. But you at homeschool, you can see all the positives and, maybe there's only one negative, but you've seen all the other positives that day as well.
Yeah, it definitely is different perspective. When I had him in school, I tried, when my baby turned 1, I tried to put him in again. They never could keep him for more than 2 or 3 hours at a time because evidently his behaviors were that bad, which is alarming because I wasn't seeing that at home. But for 2 or 3 hours, I would take him and I'd send him. And every time I picked him up, it was a very, very long, bad report. And I honestly was developing so much stress over this that I was getting sick. I was falling apart. I had stress and anxiety. I had high blood pressure coming. And I didn't put it together at first how this was affecting me. And then I'd bring Justice home and he's angry and I couldn't settle him. And it would take 3 or 4 hours to get him back to somewhat himself, but not really quite. And then we'd start it all over again. So for us, this round especially, it really just wasn't working. But the bad reports were just breaking my heart. It was terrible. And I believe he was acting badly there. I'm not saying they were making it up. It was just that it wasn't for him. It wasn't working for him. And at some point you have to look at what you're doing. And you might really want him in the school environment because it could be very beneficial to them. And, I have family members that I was looking to for support that were constantly telling me, oh, don't you dare take him back out of school, that poor kid. This is the best thing that can happen for him. But they're not in my home seeing how hard I'm working with him. They weren't seeing the level of energy and effort that I was pouring into him and how well he was doing with me. And so you just got to make a decision based on what's best for you. Don't worry about what others are saying. For us, I was trying to force Justice into something that it wasn't working. And it might be that one day it will. But right now it wasn't. And he is definitely doing better. And I'm able to relax a little bit. The stress was really getting to me. Every day was a negative report. So at home, we have negative moments and there are behaviors and there are moments, but there is so much positives that it does help me to see that it's not just this one big bad report about my son. He's got so much great things he's doing and he's happy and he's working hard on this particular subject. He's loving this and I'm seeing new interests. All that helps me go forward and to keep pushing and fighting for him. So yeah, it was a little depressing and it was a little overwhelming. And I know the schools are doing the best they can. Every child's different. For Justice, this is a season to homeschool. And so that's what we're doing.
Definitely. Like you say, every child is different. And I think it's really hard now to provide teachers with all the training that they need to accommodate all these needs. Like here where I am, we are really lucky. And, we have the special needs school, we have the autistic building and all our staff, we specialize in autism. We spend a lot of the year on different courses. We work with parents, we work with homeschoolers. So our knowledge is always building. But I know in a mainstream general education school, it's really hard for teachers to sort of find that training and get that experience and that knowledge. And I think for them it's so overwhelming that they're getting stressed, and then that's not helping the child and that's not helping you at home. And I think sometimes they're doing the best they can, but like you say, maybe it's just that school isn't for him and homeschooling is a lot better for him.
Yeah, when we lived in a different state, there was a public school that was so well set up for autism. That's the year that he made it a whole year. And then when we moved, just realizing that in particular where we're at, the school is not set up at all. There really is nothing in this school geared towards severe autism. So my son was put in an environment that was absolutely not conducive for learning and growing. And so the teacher was trying as hard as she could. And she was a good teacher, but he was the most most severe in her class, and there wasn't anything in that school. There wasn't any equipment. There wasn't any OT type stuff. There wasn't any place to take him for a release. There was nothing. There wasn't even a playground. And so it was just very difficult. And so, like I said, I mean, if you have a school that is more set up, like you're in a private school, that's amazing. And it's geared toward autism. So you're going to have what you need there. That's a great setup. But public schools are lacking a lot of times the fundings, the education, and the help that they need, and so it was difficult for us, but we tried, and we're happy with what we're doing now, and it's definitely much better for all of us.
It really sounds it. And, like you say, you tried. People can't say you never tried, because you did. You've tried numerous times, and it's just unfortunately, it's one of those things. So I know homeschooling, obviously, you can adapt what you do to better suit Justice. So is there a curriculum you follow, or how do you sort of plan out your month or your year? What sort of way do you do your planning?
I'm not following a curriculum for Justice, although I have an idea. Like, I look at curriculums and I gain ideas from them. But what I'm doing is I purchase material that's appropriate for where he is, and I put together my own curriculum. And so I'm concerned with certain things over others. And so I really want to make sure, and again, Justice is severe, so bear with me. I mean, he's 11, but he probably has a 1.5, 2-year-old level maybe. So I'm very concerned with making sure we're recognizing letters and that we're forming words. And so I work hard on that, and I've purchased material that helps me in that. And I'm really concerned that he's recognizing numbers and that he can match numbers, and that we can build, we can add, we can work with numbers like that. And so I purchased material that focuses on that. I'm really working on life skills for Justice. I mean, Justice just 2 years ago began to use his own spoon to feed himself and his own fork. I mean, so for us, it's severe, so I'm really focusing on life skills. I am a very big chart person. I have charts everywhere. I make it real fun, make it interactive so that he can really see his own progress. We do a lot of therapies in our school day, like putting in, taking out, stringing, and things that are working on fine motor, and we work on that kind of stuff. But we like to do science stuff, and so I buy things individually, to work and learn about nature, about insects, about, so basically, I've put together my own thing. I have a huge schoolroom that I've been blessed to put together slowly, piece at a time, full of options. And so one thing with Justice is he gets bored quickly with something. So I can have 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 different activities that help with spelling, for example. And so one day we do one, the next we do another, and then I start over the next week and I go back to that first one. And we kind of just rotate through, keep it exciting, keep it fresh, and he's learning now and he's working through it. So it's a makeshift curriculum. I've put it together, just working between academics and life skills. Mostly life skills is the majority of our time, but we spend about an hour to 2 throughout the day broken up with academics as well. So it's definitely fine-tuned to Justice and what his needs are and going from there. So
that sounds great. You're able to make your own curriculum. You can totally adapt that around Justice, what he needs. You can work on his interests. And I think that's something that us as teachers, we all want to do. But for you to be able to go out and do it yourself as well and make it all for Justice and see the progress he's making and obviously adapt it to his level of needs, it's just brilliant. It's lovely to hear. And the setup that you have with the classroom in the home, give him that actual classroom feel. So obviously when that door is closed in the evening, he knows obviously school time is over. And when you're in there, that school time, all that routine, you sound like you have the perfect homeschool setup.
Well, I really am very, very, very blessed to be able to have a separated room for his homeschooling. And, we moved to where we're living now about 1.5 years ago. And where we were before, we had a very large room that it was the master bedroom in the house that we gave to the schoolroom. And when we came here, the place was much smaller. And initially, I put his schooling area in the back side of the house and just the living area in the back. But I found quickly that that wasn't going to work because he needs to have a separate place where there's a door that can close, that he can get the concept that when we come in here, we're going to work. And so I am lucky that we have a really nice finished large room in our basement, and it's just put together well. And we turned that into a big OT school area. And so thankfully, we have a really good setup right now. And he does, he does know when we go down there, we're going to work. And the unfortunate part for us is we do have his sensory OT stuff in there as well. So there are trampolines, there's a crash pad, there's a ball pit. So he tends to want to just jump in and play. And so I have to go, I give him about 10 minutes of that, and then it's work. And then when we take our breaks, he could go and jump on the trampoline and play. We have our sensory bins and so forth. So I kind of wish I could have it separated, but that's a perfect world. We're not in a perfect world. So we do have OT and school together, but it's a nice large room. It works well. He has a nice desk with his schedules before him and his pictures, his pec pics and all that stuff. And so there is an area that is very functional for work. And then there's the back side of the room that has all the funner things and the OT stuff. And so it's working well for us because he works for 20 minutes and he can go play for 5, 10. And then he works for 20 and he can go play for 10. And so we just kind of do it that way. We give him liberty, to have breaks like that,
I think that's brilliant because obviously us in schools as well, we really encourage the brain breaks and being able to get up away from the desk and, have a little relax before they come back and just refresh themselves. And although you were saying about your OT in a classroom all in one room, I still think that's okay because that's the setup of most classrooms these days. So you're not exposing him to anything, that's really different that he would struggle with. And he obviously enjoys that room and everything all together. And it's obviously working for you, which that makes it then the perfect homeschool room for you.
It's definitely a blessing, and it's helped with the homeschooling process because I know he sees it fun, that it's a fun thing. We do work, we do hard stuff, but there is that break. And so I think that if you have, especially if you're dealing with severe autism and you're looking to do a homeschool environment, it would be good to find a way to bring in something like a trampoline where there's movement or something where there can be that break. Like what we do for our ball pit is we go down to our local store and we buy a blow-up inflatable pool. And we blow it up with an air compressor, and then we just put the balls in. So it doesn't have to be fancy, but it works. And it gives them that place to just crash at, and to take a break.
I love the paddling pool idea because things that are geared for our children, they seem to add $20, $30 on top just because they're geared for our children. But, the paddling pool, that is a great DIY hack for many of our parents and teachers in schools as well, because, a lot of teachers are having to use their own funds for classroom. And, a paddling pool, that's so much more affordable than an actual ball pit.
Well, looking at on the autism shopping sites, a small little official ball pit is $1,000. That's a lot of money for us. I could never do that, but I can go and order a pool or go into a store and get one for $30. And so I know we're talking different, money here, but a huge fraction of the cost. It's so doable. And if it breaks, eventually they're just a blow up pool. Eventually they'll get a hole in it down the road, but it's just a few bucks. So you buy another one. It's not a huge large sum of money, and it's just so much more doable. And so you can really find ways to make it work. We thought that idea was brilliant, and it has worked perfectly. And we even use it for sand outside. It's easy, it's cheap.
That's brilliant. Like I say, there's so many things out there that are just crazy price for our children. But I love to go on Pinterest and shop for DIY sensory idea, all those sort of things. Because in our classroom, we had huge tough trays, big black sensory trays, and they go for £60-70, so around $50 a time. We went to IKEA and we bought a desk, and it has 2 inserts, so we can have 2 sensory trays on the go. We can hide them, just little things like that. I think Pinterest is great for finding DIY and more affordable ideas for us.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely options out there. If you also have a knack to you, like my husband likes to build things, and that's also good too. You can come up with stuff. But really, when you're looking to fund autism in a way, it's so overbearing and expensive, and nobody knows the extra cost that is on a family unless they're living it. Not only for us giving up, the income, but, justice requires things that my daughter doesn't. And it adds up, it adds up, it adds up, and it adds up. And so anything that you can find a clever way of doing for a better price is awesome. It's a great.
Definitely. So obviously, for when you homeschool, I know a lot of parents and their families, their main worry, which was a question coming in, was they worry they're not qualified to homeschool their children, and they worry they're not going to be able to be like a teacher is. So did you have any concerns about that, or what would you be able to say to them to sort of give them that confidence boost?
I certainly didn't think I was qualified, and I tried to do everything so perfect. I really put a lot of pressure on myself. I had to have the perfect space. I had to have the perfect material. I had to know exactly what to do. I mean, I put so much pressure on myself, and I was way too overly structured and way too demanding on my son. And it didn't work for us. So that first 2.5 years or so that I was trying to do this my way, trying to do it perfectly, I stressed myself out to no end. And I really just had to learn that, if you're homeschooling your kid, it's probably because the exact environment that's in school isn't exactly what they need, and they need something a little bit differently. So just try to relax. My advice would be give yourself some credit. You're mom or dad, and you know what's best for them, and you know how they're going to learn. You know how to teach them probably better than anyone ever will, and not to take away from teachers. We need them, but give yourself some credit and relax. And one of the things I had to learn was it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfectly structured. It doesn't have to be the perfect material. I don't have to have the best and fanciest of stuff. I can use anything. I could go outside and use nature, and we can count rocks. I mean, just try to relax and do it a little more naturally. And school is great, and it is what it is. But if you're choosing to homeschool, again, you're probably looking for something a little bit differently. And so we've learned to relax around here and to be more able to accommodate Justice and to just go with the flow. I do have a classroom, but I didn't always. And you don't have to. I think, there is an idea of having a space that is set aside for school so that they know when we come here that this is what we're doing. But a lot of times I even pack up stuff that I want to work with Justice, and we go out to the park and we go to one of those nice picnic tables and we sit out there and just do something different. I mean, really, I think that you are qualified more than you believe. And if you'll just relax with it, it'll go so much better. And so I painfully pushed myself the first 2 years, and I feel like the last 5 years have been so much better when I kind of took a chill, and relaxed and went with the flow. And so I think that if you set an expectation that's way too high, you're going to set yourself up for failure. It doesn't have to be perfect.
That's perfect, because I think even myself, when I first started, finding Pinterest and all the activities, I started panicking that I didn't have a Pinterest perfect classroom. And I think it was probably the same for you, where, you wanted that perfect homeschool classroom, because there's a lot of pressure on all of us teachers, homeschoolers, paraprofessionals, therapists. I think we all have that pressure where we need to be perfect. But like you said, being able to take your son to work in the park, in an ideal world, that's not Pinterest perfect, but it's perfect that day for him and you, for learning, to be outdoors. It's all about the environment as well.
Well, that's the other thing is, when you start looking on Instagram and Pinterest at classrooms and what other people are doing and the perfect world. I mean, everyone has a perfect classroom, don't they, on Instagram? The ones who are putting themselves out there are the ones who have it all put together. And we're looking at them and we're like, oh, I could never recreate that. I can't meet this standard. It's just not functionally possible in my life. I mean, don't do that to yourself. Just do the best that you can with what you got. Always, working towards building and growing. That's great. But that pressure, it's impossible to meet it. It's not reality. And so go with it. And so relax, and enjoy it. Like you're a teacher, Nikki, because you love what you're doing. You have a heart to teach, and you have a gifting, and you love kids, and you have a heart for autism. Let that be your qualifications. Okay. It doesn't have to look perfectly, but it works. If it works for that kid that you're working with, or for those kids that you're working with, then that's perfect. That is perfect. I remember when Justice made it that one time for a whole year in school. It was a young teacher. She's probably was teaching for only 2 years at that time. She wasn't like 30 years in with all of the skills that everyone else would have who had been doing this for so long. And she was frazzled at times, but she was absolutely perfect. I absolutely adored her. I kept telling her, you are the best gift to my son. And, it doesn't have to be Pinterest perfect. So yes, I agree with that. You got to get the standard off of yourself and just relax and go. And so that's what I've done. And it's been so much better the latter years, doing it this way and being flexible and enjoying it. I'm teaching my son because I have to, but also because I want to, and I love teaching. And that's my qualification.
I love that, where your passion is in teaching your son. And I think it's something really special if you're able to homeschool your child, because especially I know a lot of parents who come with us, like my class, they're also like Justice. They are severe, they're nonverbal. And I know from the parents' point of view where their child can't go home and tell them what happened that day. I can't imagine how frightening that is, for you guys who have to come home. And like you said, when Justice used to come home and he was having challenging behaviors, that inability to communicate with them why, I can see how that really affects parents too, and families, carers.
Oh, I can't tell you the stress that I have carried at the times that I've put him in school. And it's nothing against schools. I'm not saying this to come against schools or teachers, but because he cannot talk, he can't even almost tell me about his day. No matter how hard I've worked with him, he's still at a level where he doesn't even use picture books, for stories. It's very, very alarming. It's scary. It's frightening. We have a GPS tracking on him at all times. What if we lose him? What if, he's got allergies? He's got EpiPens. What if he goes into anaphylactics? What are they going to know that this is what he needs? And, this is why he's turning over tables, because he's been trying to tell you 10 times he needs to go to the bathroom, but you're not catching the signs. Because he doesn't sign, he doesn't give the right communication. So it's a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress to carry, when that's your child and he's at that level. So yes, it's very hard. And that's part of the reasons that we've chosen to homeschool and to keep him close. And, I've lost Justice 4 times. And this is a very hard thing. I mean, I've lost him once. My husband lost him 3 times. I mean, we are on top of him all the time. I never take my eyes off of him. But even with that, we've blinked. We've looked away for a moment and lost him in public places. And that fear is the most horrifying thing I've ever experienced in my life, because when I call, he doesn't come, and he doesn't know better to stay close, and he just takes off, and he'll run to roads, he runs to open doors, he just runs. And so those are all things that we consider in our personalized situation that, if I can lose him, and I am so on top of it. I mean, this is my life. This kid is my life. And if I can lose him, what can happen when he's in an environment where there's many kids who are severe like him and the teachers are overwhelmed? It's not their fault. Things happen. So yes, all these things have played into the decision making for us. And for sure, it's been a tough decision, but it's been a good one for us.
I think it's good, you took all these things into account. And like you say, it is nothing against teachers. It's nothing against schools. It's just all those factors into your personal circumstances. And with Justice as an individual, all those things come into play. And that's where homeschooling has been perfect for you. That's the best fit for him and for you as a family as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's about right.
So with homeschooling, I know it can be quite hard where it's sort of just you two, the socializing. Are there any groups around you that homeschool groups sort of meet up and, you chat with each other?
It's very disappointing to say that a lot of times you look for homeschooling groups. There's plenty of them everywhere, but are there homeschooling groups for autism, especially if you're bringing in the level of severity that my son has? It's going to be more of a disruption, to whatever they're doing functionally. I remember when my baby was 1, and, I said then that I was just going to start creating my own groups, one for autism, one for the moms of severe autism to get together and play dates, but also like maybe once a week have people come to my house, since I do have a nice classroom and we can all just do activities together. And I still believe that that's going to happen, but because there was the baby, because there was the adjustment with my son, because we moved 1.5 years ago, and that was a huge adjustment for my son, because I'm still nursing my baby. She's 2, and so it's still a full-time job. It hasn't happened yet, but I have looked, I have spent a lot of time looking for community type things like that. There really isn't. And I'm going to be very real with you. Both places that I have lived in both states, I never found anything. And I think there's a huge lack in that arena. And I think that there's a huge void, and a lot of people, moms and parents, caretakers that are dealing with autism and severe autism are very lonely and very much alone, and a lot of times there isn't much out there. So I have all these ideas and I have these things that I want to do. I even have ideas for business models for, creating places for these autistic kids. Like my son is 11, he's 100 pounds, he's a big boy, and he can't can't go into these little indoor play places and play with the other typical children anymore, because it's not appropriate for him and his weight and his size and his behavior. So there's a lot of ideas, and I hope at some point I can put these down and I can organize and get things started. But there haven't found much community or support. Now, we always take Justice out in public. We're always at parks. We're always at indoor parks. We're always at museums. We go to the library. We do all these things, but our experiences are going to look different than yours or a typical child. I mean, when we go to the library, he's not desiring to go check out books with me. I have to kind of force him to go through the motions. This is what we do, and let's sit down at this table and let's look at this book, see how those kids are doing it. And the whole time I'm trying to work him through. It's not necessarily something that he's wanting to do. So, but we do it. We go to the children's museums. We also have attempted other types of museums, and it's challenging. It's not easy, but we're constantly at least putting him in public places and active around other children. It's not the same kids every week, which would be ideal to create like a social little place where he can get to know people and develop relationships. That would be ideal. And I'm not saying that it's impossible for someone else where they're at, but for me and the two places that I've lived with him, it has not worked well. We haven't found much community.
That's so sad. Like, it's amazing how you take Justice out and you do all these amazing things with him, but it's just sad that there's not sort of, groups local where you can all maybe offload with each other as well and, talk to each other for advice. And I know we are really lucky in our city where we have a local autism charity, and it's run by parents of autistic children, and they do all these wonderful things together, and they hire out, like you said, Justice, these small play areas aren't really suitable for him anymore, but they hire out halls and it's just for their children. And I think having you put something like that into action, even if it's 5-10 years from now, that's such a lovely goal to have in the long run for your child as well as other children too.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely in my heart. It's definitely a goal I have. And I see the need as my son grows. I can't sneak him in anymore to these indoor play areas with these typical children because he's too big and he doesn't understand boundaries. And, I can't hide it anymore. I can't, he's overwhelming. And other parents are looking like, why is that kid in here? And so I'm learning as he's growing that this is a need that is not met in a lot of places. And so I definitely have a heart to do that. And I really hope that it could be sooner rather than later. I have so many ideas and it's definitely a need for sure.
I think it would be amazing because, like you say, so many of our families and carers, they're so lonely because they feel like they can't take their children to these places and they feel trapped inside their own homes. I know a lot of parents, they haven't got the confidence to take their child on a bus and go to a soft play area. And like you say, a lot of our children struggle with boundaries and knowing how to interact with other children around them.
Yeah, it's very sad. It's also very sad because, for example, Justice is a very sociable little guy, unlike maybe some autistic kids who prefer to be alone and quiet. But he wants to be around people. He wants to get in their face, and he'll go right up to someone and tap them right on the chin and grab them and want them to interact. But he's awkward. He can't talk. He's right in their face. He's towering over the little ones, but he desires that so much. And then you see over and over and over again, rejection. Kids, what's wrong with him? Why is he doing that? And what is he doing? He's got a chewy in his mouth. He chews on the chewy tube. And what is that? And really, it's been a really horrifying experience for us. We've had parents grab their children like he's going to hurt them. Justice wouldn't hurt a fly. He's a precious, sweet little boy. So it's been very overwhelming. It's been sad for him. It's been heartbreaking for mom to watch. And for me, so many times I leave public places in tears. Now, Justice doesn't seem to be affected. He just has a smile from ear to ear and just keeps going with a big, bright smile. He's a happy little guy. And that's a good sign that I'm doing something right, I feel. But but you can see the need for a place where he can be around other people who have different disabilities, who cannot look at him like there's something wrong with him, and parents who are not going to look at him like there's something wrong with him. And that need is growing as autism rates grow and disabilities of all kinds really increase. There's definitely definitely a need for that kind of stuff. So it's been really hard, but we keep putting them out in public places. I keep bringing them there, and I teach them as we go. I feel like the best way to teach him this type of stuff is in the environment, hands-on, and I help him the best I can to interact with kids. And if I need to explain to them, if they say to me, why is he doing that, then I explain to them. My explanation is, especially to the younger ones, is, have you ever had a boo-boo, like a cut on your hand or arm? And, oh, yes, I have. Well, you put a Band-Aid on it and it heals, right? Yes. Well, Justice has a big boo-boo on his brain, and there's really no way to get to it, to heal it. And so it kind of causes him to be different. And this is who he is. And this is, but he's very happy to be around you, and he would love to play with you, and he would love to spend time with you. And that seems to kind of help the younger ones, especially, to understand and to not be afraid of him. But it's definitely a need. There's definitely a big lack there. And I hope that I could find a way to build something in Justice's honor someday.
I like that you use all these as teachable moments for children who maybe don't understand, they've never seen autism before, but you're helping them to sort of understand. Right. And with that, you're opening up to a whole new life for them, where maybe they take away something there. And when they meet an autistic child in the future, they can be like, oh, hang on, I'm sure someone told me something about this, and you're just giving them that little bit of knowledge, which is why I think, when we're teaching about autism awareness in general education schools, it's so important that children from a young age recognize that we're all different, and some people look different to others, some people do things different to others, we all talk different. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and what I do have a lot of teachable moments, especially with young kids, and it can be a little awkward because the parents are usually right there and they're not taking that opportunity to teach. But I find that the little ones have such an eagerness to learn, and I'll say things like, we all do things a little bit differently. It's okay. I kind of break it down to where they don't look at him like he's scary anymore. Oh, okay, he's just different, and so it's okay, not a big deal. You're different than me, and we do things differently, and Justice does things like this, and that's okay. And so we break it down, and I've seen a lot of transformations on the playgrounds. I mean, I see it better in the little kids than the parents. The parents still have the look. They still have the, oh, what's this kid doing? And, my son, when he goes to the park, he likes to play in the sand or the dirt or the mulch, whatever they have as the bedding ground for the playground. And he picks it up and he drops it, and he picks it up and he drops it. He doesn't throw it at people. He's not doing anything inappropriate, but he can do that for an hour if I let him. And kids are like, why is he doing that? Well, that's what Justice, that's how he likes to play. And then sometimes the kids will get down and do it with him, and they're eager to adapt and to grow, but the parents will look at you like, oh, you just taught my kid this terrible thing. So it definitely has been challenging more with the parents than the kids, but I have absolutely loved the opportunities to have those teachable moments outside of the house, because there needs to be more of an awareness of autism, what it looks like. It's not scary. It's just different. It's okay that we're different. And so that's kind of how I've done it. I've had a lot of those great moments.
It's brilliant. The work that you do, you are one of the most brilliant people I know for advocating autism and wanting to teach others about autism, and not just spreading awareness, but acceptance as well. And like you said, I think children are a lot more adaptable than adults are. And it's something I always say, adults always worry about how their child's going to react. But I don't think it's how the child's going to react. I think it's more they're worried about how they think they would react if they were a child. Like you say, 9 times out of 10, young children, they just want to learn. They want to know what it is. And I think sometimes those questions can come across quite hurtful to us, the way they may say, like you said, what's wrong with him? But using that as a moment to turn around and be like, it's not what's wrong with him, it's who he is, and this is who he is, this is what he does. It's teaching them as well, but appropriate questions. And there's nothing worse than avoiding eye contact with someone who's different. We want to encourage that discussion and being able to socialize with people who are different than what we think we are when we're little.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that. I mean, it's definitely been neat to see kids come around so easily. And one of the heartbreaking things, though, is as I have to explain sometimes these things to children who are asking questions, Justice, you can see that it bothers him. He starts right away putting his fingers in his ears, and he hangs his head down. And right in front of the kids, right in front of everyone, I tell Justice, honey, you don't have to do that. Take those fingers out of your ears, put your head up. You're wonderful. Mommy loves you perfectly. You're exactly perfect the way you are. It's okay. Relax. And he'll take his hands out of his ears and he'll look straight up and look at the people. Like I kind of walk him through even that aspect. Like, you don't have to be ashamed that you're different. It's okay. No big deal. And I explain to him later when we leave, Mommy has to explain to them why you're not talking to them, because then they're going to think you're rude. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you're different, and that's all right. Mommy's different too. We all have something that's different. And so I have to work on his heart as well. But it's definitely, there have been times, even though I've handled the situation what I feel like is the best that I can, that by the time I get to the car, I'm broken down in tears, because it's hard. It's very heartbreaking to be a mom and to see that exchange. But at the same time, it's rewarding when I see the child come around and then be willing to play with my son. And you know that you have instilled a seed. At least it's a seed, right? And maybe that can grow into a very compassionate person later in life.
Definitely. I think, that being able to learn from such a young age and understanding all these things, I think that's vital to then lead to understanding adults, and adults who understand what's going on. And it's not just a child who's running around a supermarket screaming. That's not just a child. That's a child who, they can't communicate, or something's happened. And, that dismissal look that you can get sometimes. I know when we go out in public and we've had a meltdown, it could be something like the candles have changed in the fragrance aisle and the smell is too much for them. And, we're on the floor, and the best thing to do is for us to stay on that floor for 5 minutes until we've worked our way out of it. And I think that disapproving look, it's okay for us as a teacher, because I have 6 other members of staff with me. I have a little support team there. As a parent, 9 times out of 10, you're on your own in that situation. And I think it's so upsetting to have people just looking and not understanding.
Well, if I'm going to be fair and honest, I'm 40 years old right now. Back in my 20s, back when I was 20, 25, before I had kids, I would see a child having a nasty tantrum in a store, and I would judge in my heart, and I would say, oh, I would never allow my kid to do that. I think that we all have this idea that we're going to have perfect situations and perfect children. And it's easy to judge someone else when you have not walked through it. But boy, you grow up in life and you realize the things that you judged when you were ignorant of that situation sure changes when you're the one walking through it. And so here I am now having so much more compassion as I'm walking through a grocery and I see what you just explained, and I say to myself, wow, that was us yesterday. And I just go, and so many times, I can't tell you how many times I have gone up to parents and I've just said, Mom, you're doing a fantastic job, and I'll just give her a pat on the shoulder and they'll just look at you like, whoa, what? I've had about 4 or 5 times where somebody has come up to me in one of our local stores here and come up to me and say, is your child autistic? Just flat out ask me, and I'll say, yes. Well, I've been a behavioral therapist for 30 years. You're doing an amazing job, Mom. I just want to tell you. And it has literally rocked my world, and I have broken down in tears every time, because here I am thinking that this is one of the biggest nightmares ever in the middle of the store. My son, and someone who understands has come and given me that pat on the shoulder. And so I have definitely returned that. But isn't it amazing how it can be so different when you're looking from the outside and you have no understanding, and then you walk through something and then it's like, okay, now I know why that mom is so distressed and that child is so uncontrolled, and she's not even really trying anymore to get him to hush. She's just trying to get through the line. Now I know why, because he's probably autistic, and she knows that until she can get him out of that environment, not much can happen. And so it's different, we grow in this. And so hopefully we can be teaching others with our examples as we go.
Definitely. And I think, the more that autism awareness takes off and we are teaching in schools, maybe that understanding is there from an early age. Like you, before I worked with autistic children, I had no idea, the things that they have going on for them and all the different sensory overload issues that can happen, and the communication difficulty. That was all totally new to me, and I went into the class and I was like, whoa, what is this? And until you start doing all the training, you've never been prepared for that. That was never taught to me in school.
Right. Absolutely not. So we're all kind of learning as we go. I think there's a lot more awareness than there was 10 years ago, and we're getting somewhere. And so there's hope.
We really are. And now with, the media coverage, it is being spread further, and that's only positive. That can just move in one direction, and that's just great for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the final question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone who's currently torn about whether to send their child either to school, back to school, or the first time school, or whether to homeschool them? What's that one piece of advice you'd give them to think about?
Well, I feel like what I've learned the most in my experience of being a mom with my son is that you are their greatest advocate. Educate yourself at every level. Like if you're feeling like you want to do the school thing, then really know what your rights are. Really know what you can demand from the school, not in a bad way, okay? Don't go in with a bad attitude, but just you're the biggest advocate to that child. If you have an opportunity to homeschool and you can, you financially can, you have an ability to do it, educate yourself as best as you can. In this child's life, it doesn't have to be perfect that you're going to be their greatest advocate. You're going to be their hero. And so I would just say, you're going to have to put in 100% no matter what you're doing. And it doesn't have to be what someone else thinks you should do. I had a lot of people who were not actively involved in my life, mostly family members who were completely on the outside, who saw my son maybe once a year, who had made no big attempts to be actively involved in his life, tell me how I was doing everything wrong. And I fell under that. I mean, that crumbled me. It just crushed my heart in the beginning because I wanted to do what was right for my son. And you always think that someone else who is telling you what's right knows better, but they don't. You do. And so I would just recommend that you do what you feel is best. If you wanted to homeschool and you just can't, it's not financially possible, don't beat yourself up for that either. You can still teach your child. You can still spend hours over the weekend. You can still spend time in the evenings. You can still work with them all day. Every moment to me is a homeschooling moment. Whether I'm at home, whether I'm going outside with him, whether I'm at the stores with him, it is a teachable moment. So just be the best that you can be. Take in information and pour it out the best that you can. If you have to put them in schools and you don't want to, that's okay too. Just advocate. Know what your rights are. Know what they should be receiving in a public school setting. You will probably have to fight for everything that you want for your kid there. So you're going to need to know what you have the rights to. And it's not that I'm trying to say anything bad about the public schools. It's just they're underpaid, they're understaffed, and they don't have the right support. So you just have to fight for it. So be willing to give it your all, no matter what path you take. And I think it's either way, you can make it the best that you can. And so I just want to encourage people who are listening, who are considering it, don't be afraid of homeschooling. It's not that scary. It doesn't have to be. And if you think maybe down the road, but for now school, just be the advocate, be the hero. You're built for this. I believe I was created for this. No one can do it better than you probably, so just go for it. And so that's kind of my advice, I think.
And that's perfect, because I know a lot of listeners, that advice is probably really helpful for them right now, especially those who are thinking maybe they're homeschooling right now and they don't know if it's been the right decision, or those who are thinking about homeschooling. I think all those words you've just said, that's going to help a lot of our listeners. So I'm really thankful that you come on today and you've shared so much of your journey with us, from homeschooling, your family dynamics, and helping your child get used to having a new arrival into the family, and even about autism awareness and how you've spread that so well when you go out with justice and do all these wonderful things in the community.
Well, thank you, Nikki. It's been really neat to be on and to share this and to talk with you about it. And I really would be so blessed if it can help anyone out there in any way. It's an honor. Thanks. Again, want to encourage all the moms out there. People don't know, and the dads, they don't know how you're not sleeping. They don't know how all of your choices have to be worked around this child, and all of your decisions, and even finances. I mean, justice takes a huge part of our finances, and nobody would know that. They judge everything that we do. Just live your life the best you can with your family unit, with your immediate family unit, and just don't worry. I feel like just saying that there's going to be a couple moms or dads out there listening who are going to be like, we have been told so much by outside people, and they're feeling the weight of that. Just let that go. You got to live your life for your family, your immediate family, and your situation, and you're probably doing it better than you even give yourself credit for. I just want to commend all the moms and dads out there and caretakers who are up all night with these kids. You're doing good. You're doing a good job, and other people don't have to necessarily see it. Just know in your heart that you're giving this child the best opportunity that you can. And so I just really want to encourage people more than anything as I sign off. I know that would have meant the world to me, for someone to come to me when I've gone 2 weeks with no sleep saying, hey, thanks, you're doing good. So thanks, moms, thanks, dads, thanks, caretakers and teachers. You guys are awesome.
Honestly, you've nearly moved me to tears right now. And I think a lot of our listeners, they're going to be in the same boat. I think you will have touched so many hearts coming on here today and sharing your story. Thank you so very much, Nicole.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Teaching Autism and Special Education Community podcast. I hope that you have been able to take away so much information from Nicole, her homeschooling journey and her family dynamics and the way that she introduced a new arrival to the family. If you're looking for support, whether you are a homeschooler, a teacher, a therapist, you could even just be a parent or carer who wants to do a little bit of extra work at home and help support your child, then be sure to check back for future podcast episodes and also join our Facebook group, which is Teaching Autism and Special Education Community, and you can find this on my Facebook page, Teaching Autism. This is where we all get to communicate with each other, support with each other, ask for advice, and help each other out on our own individual journeys. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon.